Hey there, and welcome to a week in the life of someone who's aspiring to become an indie game developer while managing the responsibility of a full-time job and also generally being busier than he'd like. This will be a lot like my usual weekly devlogs, but I want to show off more of what goes on outside of my dev work to help inspire other busy people to make time for the things they're passionate about. Speaking of busy, this week's development progress is starting off on Tuesday. On Monday, yesterday, I exercised in the morning before work and went shopping for plants after work to build our little garden for the summer. By the time dinner was finished up, I didn't have much productivity left in me for the day. That said, I try not to have 0 days where I don't even think about my game, so to prepare for today I sat down and spent some time organizing my Trello board so that I'd be ready once I sat down to do some development. And that brings us to today. I climb on Tuesday mornings with Kate before work, so this evening will be my first chance to write some code. I've got a bit of a project to tackle this week, which involves stripping out a part of Blink that I worked pretty hard on earlier in its development. This is what I've called the intermission. After you fill between 10 and 20 circles, the camera zooms out, you lose control of the player, and you're updated on how well you've been doing and what your new score multiplier is. I thought this was a neat idea, but my friends who've played the game have unfortunately all given me the same feedback. So, this week we're removing the intermission and coming up with a new way to reward the player with a higher multiplier. Time to get started. So it's just past 8 o'clock here and we've actually made a whole lot of progress removing the intermission code. If I go ahead and play, it's not so easy to see because previously after about 10 circles you'd see it zoom out and update your multiplier. Now you can just kind of play on forever. One thing that I also had to hook up, you'll see if I lose the game here, I have an option to continue your round by watching an optional video advertisement. What it would do is after you finished watching the video, it would zoom out, show you your multiplier, and continue playing. I was able to reuse a little bit of my intermission code here to actually zoom straight back to where the player is, skip all the stuff where it shows you your multiplier, and allow you to continue playing. This is pretty smooth, and I actually didn't have to write any new code for this, which I'm thrilled about. With the intermission code gone, we no longer have a way to update the player's multiplier, which is obviously no fun. Probably work on that first thing tomorrow morning. I made a bunch of progress this evening. It's about 8:20 and I'll be going to bed in around an hour or so. So I'm going to take the rest of the night off and hang out with Kate. I'll catch up with you guys bright and early in the morning. Welcome back on this beautiful Wednesday morning. It's just after 6 a.m. I'm going to grab a cup of coffee and pick up where we left off yesterday, which was adding the multiplier functionality back into the game. So I think I came up with a cool idea for how to implement the new multiplier. I currently have a mechanic where as you fill circles accurately one after the other, the note that's played gets higher and higher up to a streak of 8. At the top note, you get a big particle explosion and the cadence resets. I'm thinking that at the 8th note, when you filled 8 circles accurately in a row, I'll increment the multiplier, and that should be a pretty cool reward. I'm going to get to work on coding that up. Alright, so I think this turned out quite well. I'm going to go ahead and try to give you guys a demo. Of course, this starts out by trying to accurately fill 8 circles in a row and get that note cadence to the top. And once we do that, we see a similar animation to what we had with the intermission. It'll kind of zoom in, slide down, and increment the value. But it doesn't stop the flow of the game, so if you had any kind of rhythm going, you get to keep playing, and you're not wondering why the heck you zoomed out and you no longer have control of the player. So I think this turned out really great. With the work wrapped up on the multiplier, I think it's time to merge that feature branch and head back to Trello. I've got a few more important things I want to work on this week, the first of which is some improvements to the pickups that we worked on last week. Specifically, I've received feedback that they spawn too close to the player and sometimes are immediately picked up by the player. And also it was suggested that the pickups move in some way to kind of show that you want to move towards them and pick them up. I'm going to work on, I think, this second one and create some kind of pulsing effect for the pickup this morning. To make the pickups look a little bit more interesting, I created this pulse component. And what this does is take a minimum and maximum pulse size and a pulse speed and just change the local scale of the game object that this script is attached to. I applied that to my pickup prefab, and I'll go ahead and show you how that looks in the game, as long as I can get a perfectly filled circle here. So as you can see, this thing just kind of pulses in and out. I think it looks a little bit more interesting. Your eye is drawn to it a bit more, and even though it's a small improvement, I think it's an improvement and I'm happy with it. Well, it's going on 7:30, but I'm really stoked that in about an hour and a half we made so many improvements to gameplay. I think it's time to get ready for work. Hopefully I'll have some more time for development tonight before volleyball, but we'll see. Catch up with you guys later. Alrighty guys, it's 5 o'clock. We made it through the workday. My plan was to get home and make a little more progress tonight, but last minute I got an invitation to a work happy hour within walking distance of where I live. Hard to pass that up. I'm gonna go ahead and take this one and have some fun this evening. We made a bunch of progress this morning, so I don't feel too bad about it. For me, this type of thing is all about finding a balance. That's how I stay interested and motivated in my projects. So since I made a bunch of progress this morning, we're gonna take some time off this afternoon and have some fun. Catch up with you guys soon. Alright, so I got back from my happy hour around 6 o'clock, and since then I've just been hanging out with Kate, and we made a really delicious dinner. But it's now 7:50, and I want to see if I can squeeze in one more defect fix before I head off to volleyball around 8:30 or 8:45. I want to try and fix the situation where when you get a perfect circle fill, the pickup spawns, and it spawns right underneath the player. That's not a good experience because you're still hearing the sound from filling the circle, and you immediately hear the next sound in the cadence because you have activated the pickup. I want the pickup to spawn somewhere further away from the player so that there's some choice to be made whether or not you want to fly across the screen and go grab it. Well, unfortunately it's time to go to volleyball and we didn't quite get there. What I'm trying to do is write some code that will spawn the pickup in the opposite corner-ish as the player, meaning if the player is in kind of like the bottom left quadrant, it'll spawn in the top right quadrant. I tried to get cheeky and write this in 2 lines of code basically using ternary statements, but it's really no wonder it doesn't work. If you look at this, it is an incredibly long, unreadable bit of code. And yeah, it just it doesn't really work. All the things spawn off screen. So I'm gonna come back and revisit this probably tomorrow. I'm definitely gonna be tired when I get back from volleyball. But we tried. I've got a starting place for tomorrow, so I guess I'm happy with that. It is Thursday. I slept a little later than normal this morning because volleyball went pretty late last night, till like 11 or so. But I still got around 45 minutes before I need to get ready for work, so I'm going to try and clean up some of that code that I wrote last night. This is the code in question that I showed you before. It's just 2 really long ternary statements just trying to calculate a value, and it's totally unreadable. I'm going to try and break these out a little bit, and hopefully that'll help me figure out what I did wrong here. Well, that did not take long at all, mostly because I thought of what I had done wrong as I was walking to my car for volleyball last night. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into the demo. We should see that if I get a perfect circle fill here in either, well, pretty much anywhere on the screen, in this case it was the top left corner, the pickup spawned in the bottom right corner. So it's always going to be the opposite corner. In that case, I was technically in the bottom left here, so this one spawned somewhere in the top right. That's just going to make it a little bit of a tougher decision if you want to go over and try to grab the pickup or not, which I think is great. No longer spawns directly underneath you and overlaps the sound, which is also good. So I think this is definitely a really positive change. I think that's all I'm going to do this morning. My coffee is almost ready, so I'm just going to drink some of that, probably play a video game for 30 minutes, and relax a little bit before I head off to work. You guys may have noticed by now that sometimes I sit down to work on my game for like an hour and a half, and sometimes I sit down to work for like 15 minutes. The way I do this, and the way I recommend you do it, is to lay out your Jira tasks, and when you do that, think about how much time you'll have in your upcoming week based on what you already have scheduled. Sometimes I know I'll only have like 30 minutes in the morning, or sometimes I know I'll have a 2-hour chunk after work. Create your tasks to try and fit those time slots so that each time you sit down, you say, oh, I have this long to work, I'm going to pull off this task, and it gives you a chance to actually move that task to in progress and complete it by the time you stand up for your computer and go do whatever you have to do. I think this is an incredibly rewarding way to make progress in your game, and that constant feeling of progression helps you stay motivated. So definitely try that. It's finally Friday, and we're kicking things off around 7 o'clock this morning. This will probably be my last window for development this week. I gave myself the night off last night and played way too much Rocket League, and this afternoon I have family coming into town for the weekend. Should have time for a few bug fixes before work, though. Looking at Trello, I see 2 things I want to tackle this morning. The first is a defect where my tutorial text would only show during intermissions. Now, since the intermission's gone, it's not showing at all, so I need to fix that. And finally, I had made a note for gameplay tweaks to make the game a little bit harder. I would like to do another build to device before the weekend, so I think this is a good chance to get in there and tweak some things to make it a little bit tougher to play. Alright, so we got the tutorial text working again, as you can see here. It now properly shows in the case where we've played less than 5 rounds and we have a high score of less than 20. As far as making the game harder, I have a few things I can tweak going forward. First, I can change the rate at which the background darkens. I can then tweak how much light circle fills of varying accuracy add back to the screen. I can even go so far as to change how accurately the player tracks the finger, or mess with the amount of bats that show up at certain scores. I think the key will be to change just one of these variables at a time, and do so fairly often so that I can fine-tune gameplay over the coming weeks. Today I've just increased the rate at which the light dims, and I think it feels pretty good for now. With that, I think I'm ready to wrap up things for the week. With only a handful of hours of development, we made great improvements to the flow of the game, fixed up some defects, and made steps towards improving gameplay balance. I hope this video showed that even if you've got a busy schedule, or just other hobbies that you want to make time for, it's still possible to make great progress on your personal project. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the next video.